Walker, I actually met through another friend who suggested that I talk to him. I have a friend, big shout out to my friend Paul Copcutt, who we have regular monthly luncheons, and he was telling me about this guy who blew up on LinkedIn, sold a painting for like $4,000 on LinkedIn. That's a while ago when LinkedIn was not such the platform it is today. And artists are not, that's kind of not what you buy on LinkedIn. You don't usually buy art. So I was really intrigued, reached out, had an interview with him. He's a great guy. He used to be a police officer, and now he's doing his art full time. He's got his son involved, which apparently had to help him, show him how to get onto social media. And now Tim is killing it there. So he's got some amazing artwork. It's beautiful in what he does, and it's very large. And hey, you can buy some on LinkedIn if you want. But let's talk to Tim and find out exactly how he got started and how he's selling art on social media.
She got off the show and she said, "Do you need more people? I know people." And boy, that day my email was just going crazy. The messenger blew up. So welcome to the show. So you are a very accomplished artist. We'll get into that in a minute. You're also a police detective.
Yeah.
Tell us what you're doing now and kind of how you got there.
Well, yeah, now I'm just going into my 20th year as a full-time professional artist,
wow.
as an actual easel painter,
yeah.
which I never even knew existed when I was a kid. I grew up with the idea and was told that if you wanted to be an artist, you had to be a commercial artist or a graphic designer. And so I actually studied for that, like took commercial art in high school, took graphic design in college, came out of college in 1979, right in the middle of the recession.
Right.
And after 2 years, I'd been laid off 3 different jobs, doing the absolute lowest level, like pay stub, which was not the dream. And I just thought after 2 years, this is not working out.
Right.
This is not why I wanted to be an artist. And the Toronto Police Force at the time was hiring.
Okay.
And so I went down. I had an uncle who was on the police force who thought I might enjoy it, might be good at it. I put an application in, got accepted, and then that led to an 18-year career as a police officer. And I actually thought that was going to be my career. I'd kind of put the whole dream of being an artist on hold. Right. And I still, though, this is funny, and you'll relate to this. I was really interested in reading your background with caricatures, because that was the only kind of art that I was doing while I was on the police force. It was like a compulsion of just always doodling caricatures.
Okay.
And then once other people got to see that, then it was like, oh, so-and-so's retiring. Could you do a caricature of them? Yeah. And then it got to the point where that was expected. Anybody that at the division where I worked, if they got promoted or if they were retiring, that it ended up being eventually like a full half sheet watercolor. Yeah. And I'd actually be given like a day off work to do it for the person. And I also really think, though, that was like doing a caricature, I think, is one of the most difficult things there is in art, because I also ended up getting into portraiture, very serious portraiture, and was like elected a senior signature member of the Canadian Institute of Portrait Artists. But doing a straight up portraiture is just reporting on what's there.
Right.
Whereas doing a caricature, it's like you're stretching what's there, but it still has to be identifiable as that person. Yeah. And anyways, I found that whole kind of time period of while I was doing all the caricatures, I think it was instrumental in developing my eye, my ability to see and, record what was important. But anyways, while I was on the police force, there was a charity golf tournament that was involving the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Toronto Police Force. Right. And I was asked to do a caricature of a bunch of the hockey players to promote the event. So I did that. They ended up then putting it up for sale at the auction, and it went for like $500, which I thought, okay, that's cool. That was probably the first time anyone had paid anything for my art in a long time. Yeah. And the next year they asked me to do something again, and I thought, well, I'm going to do something a little more serious, like the sports prints that were really big at the time. And so I did that. And that was the year. That was right after the year where the Leafs almost made it to the final.
They almost made it.
Yeah. So So it was Dougie Gilmore,
Yeah.
Peter Zezel, Dave Ondercheck, and
Yeah.
Felix Potvin. So I
My
did this.
favorite time period too.
Oh, I'm hoping it's coming back.
Yeah.
But I did this painting, and that painting ended up selling for $2,800
Oh, wow.
at the auction. And then at around the same time, so that got me started to think about maybe I should get back serious about my art.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, a friend of mine, Billy Hancock, the police officer, was murdered on the job, same age as me. And it just really brought home to me that, boy, we get one at bat at this life.
Yeah.
And, you know, my grand plan was I'll do my 30, 35 years in the police force. Then I'll have another 20 or 30 years to focus on art.
Yeah.
And I just realized that there's no guarantee of that. And I guess we always know that, but
Yeah.
you don't really know it
Yeah.
like internally. And that really brought it home to me. And then I guess at the same time as that, I read an article. Do you know Harley Brown?
No.
Canadian artist. He has like a column every month in the International Artist magazine. But I read a book, so I started looking into this, and I saw this book. It was called Becoming a Successful Artist.
Yeah. I think I have that book. If I look at my shelf, I probably have that book.
It's by Louis Lehrman. But what Louis Lehrman did is he interviewed all these artists who he deemed successful at one stage, but they were basically living their life off of their art. And in Harley Brown's interview, he said, it's not about talent, it's not about ability, it's not about some gift.
Yeah.
It's just all about how hard you're willing to work to achieve the things you need to do.
That's right.
And I read that, and it's kind of my initial reaction was kind of, screw you, Harley Brown. You're probably one of those gifted people, right? They all say that.
Right.
And then a little voice in the back of my head just said, but what if he's right? You know, and at this point, I was already doing really well at things that I like on the police. So I was a detective in the commercial crime unit. But that wasn't something that I was passionate about.
Right.
But then it was a very difficult technical subject with, you know, and I thought, if I'm doing really well at this stuff that I don't love, what if I applied that same kind of degree of conscientiousness to what really still is my number one love, which was art and painting. Yeah. And so I kind of made a deal with myself. I said, I'm going to assume Harley Brown is right for 1 year.
Yeah.
And I'm going to live my life as though that's true. And I am going to quit wasting time and spending time on useless stuff and start putting it towards improving my art. And he also said too, this is one thing that I found really helpful. He said, it's not just about mindlessly standing in front of the easel and pushing paint around.
Right.
It's about asking yourself the hard questions about what is the biggest weakness that I have right now, that if I could improve upon that and make it a strength, would have the biggest impact on my work.
Yeah.
And so I started doing that. And literally 3 months in, it's like, okay, he's right. Like there was such an improvement in my work. And then I started doing the things that you need to do. So started entering juried shows. I joined the local art association. Right. And all of a sudden it seemed like the world got into lockstep with me. Yeah. And it literally, we went from, I think it was about 1998. So this is about 2 years into kind of really adopting this mindset that, okay, it's all about hard work and this is what I want. So I'm just going to forge ahead towards it. I'd been elected to the Canadian Society of Painters and Watercolor. I'd been elected a senior signature member of the Canadian Institute of Portrait Artists. I'd had my work accepted in a number of shows, international shows. I won awards. And my wife said to me, she said, you know, like, I'm really, really proud of you for having achieved this, but please don't ever come to me and tell me you want to quit your job to paint full time, because, you know, we've got 2 young kids, you've got a pension that's coming, they're going to want to go to university. And I actually said, no, that's fine. My goal at that time was to set myself up into a position so that when I retired, which actually would have been about now, that I would have already a part-time business that I could move into full-time. And things just kept getting better and better, so that in 1999, I still remember this, I just had a studio open house. I used to do that once a year.
Yeah, me too.
And that's where I would sell most of my work. And I was doing a lot of portrait. I was a high realism portrait painter at that time. So I was doing a lot of portrait commissions. but we just had the studio open house. I'd sold a ton of work. I had about a dozen portrait commissions lined up. And my wife said to me, like, okay, we need to talk, which of course, as a guy, you don't want to hear that,
No,
right?
it's always bad.
Usually that doesn't work out very well. But in this case, it did. And
Yeah.
she said to me, we need to talk about not if you leave the police force to paint full time, but when.
Yeah.
She said, like, I think that it's
Wow.
clear that that's what you should be doing.
Yeah.
But here's the really good thing. And I think this is also probably one of the things that has really contributed to my success. My wife's a banker. She was a banker.
Okay.
But she said to me, she said, this is not about you being fulfilled.
Yeah.
She said, this is about the best long-term economic interests of our family.
Yeah.
And she said, I think there's a chance that you quitting the police force and pursuing your art actually might be better in the long run for us than you staying on.
Right.
Wow.
Wow.
So she said, as long as there's a chance that that is true, I'll support that. I'll support that. But if it ever becomes clear that it's not, then you need to commit right now that you'll put on a suit, get a job in corporate security, which I could have easily done because of the fraud background.
Right. Right.
And so then basically that was in like the fall of 1999. So I went in actually the next week, and went in to see my boss and just told him, I just want to let you know I'm going to be leaving at the end of the year. And it's funny, his response was, where you going? Hold up, homicide?
Yeah.
No, I'm quitting. And he went, oh yeah. And by that time, I'd probably done portraits of about a third of the people in our office, like their kids or their wives or whatever. So everybody kind of knew that I had that going on. And actually, a lot of them said afterwards, like, we were wondering, like, when you were going to wake up and just kind of realize you're wasting your time here. That's what you should be doing. Yeah. So that was it. I actually came home like 2 days before Christmas on my vacation in 1999 and started the new year as a professional artist.
Wow. I'm just listening to you talk, and we have almost the exact same story. Mine was not the police force. Mine was trucking. I went trucking for 25 years, but those last few years, I went full-time in 2006, but I started part-time about 2003. And it was the same thing, I started, our company wasn't doing anything. If someone retired, they didn't even get a cake, I don't think. So I started doing caricatures for them. At the time I started my business, I was doing landscapes and pet portraits. I wasn't doing caricatures at all. Yeah. And it kind of fell into that. And then when I decided to quit, I was a supervisor of a fleet at the time. And I said to my wife the same thing. I said, okay, I'm willing to do this for a year. And I still have my truck license to this day. I haven't driven in 12 years. But I said, I am willing to go back in the truck. If we cannot, we've got a year. If we can't pay, if I have no customers in a year, I will go back to trucking, and we won't have to worry. We've gone the other way. We've never gone back to trucking, although I'm still in there. And it was the same thing. It's like, okay, at the time, I thought I could illustrate for the trucking magazines, but I was doing a very tight pen and ink style. It was very laborious, like 30 hours to do one portrait. Yeah. And of course, everybody was going digital. And they said, well, we don't want that style. I actually had to go back and learn Photoshop. I went to school like for 6 months as a full-time to learn Photoshop. I took a camera course, I took a whole bunch of stuff just to so I could do logo designs. And then once I got that, it started going, and it just kept going out since then. But, that book is true. And I'm an exact part of it, that it is how hard you work. I know I specialize in weddings for my caricatures. And a lot of times it's not about how much you can exaggerate somebody, whereas in the caricature world, that's what we're supposed to do. They just want to have fun. And I have a personality that I love to have fun with people. And that's what carries us through. That's all of our testimonials. What a personality. How, so it is, you have to be at a certain standard for the art, but it's more than that. It's more than just the art, as you probably know, right?
But the art comes from the work.
That's right. That's right.
I love Gary Vaynerchuk, and it's like he always says, you can't read a book about push-ups or watch a video on push-ups and get better at doing push-ups. Like you got to do the push-ups, and I find that too, that people think drawing ability or artistic ability is something that's intrinsically given. It's like, no, it's like I actually sat down and did the math. I'm at about 37,000 hours of painting practice right now.
I don't even want to know where I am. I get asked almost every event, especially by a kid, how'd you learn to draw? And I just say lots of practice. And I said, if you do the math, 1,000 hours. I'm 56 years old, however long. I do 120 people per night at a wedding. I do 2 weddings a weekend. You do the math and you figure out where I am. Right?
Yeah, it's in the tens of thousands of hours. And so, and so I often, you know, a lot of artists talk to me and ask me about kind of career advice and all that. And it's kind of like the number one thing I say to them is you got to love the process.
Yeah.
Like the reason you want to be an artist is because you want to get up every day and go in the studio.
Right.
They see you at like an opening at a gallery, which happens, you know, once or twice a year. And if it's very successful, it's like, oh, wow, this is great. This is the dream. But that doesn't happen very often. And it's kind of like what gets you there is spending 4 or 5 hours a day, every day for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Pretty much, you know, in the studio, drawing, painting, working on improving the things, and an entire life up to that point to develop the skills and the concepts and all that stuff. And it's kind of funny. People go one of two ways when you tell them that. Yeah. The people who dream that they're just gonna go in their studio, like they decide they want to be an artist. They've never drawn or painted, and they think they can go in and just push paint around, and the world will discover them.
Right.
Those people get very discouraged when you tell them that. But the people who have the real passion for it, and when you tell them that it's just about hard work, like if you want this, you can have this.
That's right.
Here's what you need to do.
Yeah.
They react like I did, which was like, really? If that's all it takes, like I'm working really hard at something I don't love now. I may as well direct that towards my passion. And it's so true. I believe that now with like my whole heart and soul but you have to have the passion for actually going, like the end goal is not to become rich or famous or whatever. The end goal is to reach a point where you can go in your studio and paint almost on a daily basis.
That's right. And it's, you know, I find it's very creative. It's not so much the art, like, you know, people think, oh, creativity is about developing the art. Well, it is to a point, but it's really about, okay, how am I going to sell this thing? Like, how am I going to market it so that I'm different than the other artists down the street? You know, we're all talented in our own ways. What makes me different? You know, what can I use my art? I'm always going, okay, I've created a picture. Now, how can I use that for a book? I'm a content creation guy, so I'm really about repurposing a lot. Yeah. You know, I build things in modules and pieces so that I could use piece here, a piece there, and make different projects out of a same illustration or something like that, right?
Yeah, it's and that's one thing I think that makes me very unusual too, and it probably has to do with my background in the police force and even in like the commercial crime unit, where it's kind of that the best thing the police force gave me was discipline. Yeah. It's like you get up and you go to work every day, and the police force, if you were a minute late for, they call it parade, where you parade for duty with your, you know, you're showing your gun and you've got all your equipment there. If you were a minute late, you got docked 3 hours pay. Wow. And then if it happened 3 times within a year, you were brought up on police act charges. And so it was just like really ingrained, though, that discipline, though, being where you're supposed to be, doing what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to be doing it. Yeah. And I think that is a real problem with a lot of artists, right? Discipline is that there's that whole idea somehow that if you're artist and you're creative, you have the freedom then to be kind of lazy and just, you know,
you're waiting for inspiration.
Exactly. You know, and it's like, I love Chuck Close. He said that, you know, inspiration is for amateurs and hobbyists.
That's right. That's right. Tom Richmond says the same thing. You know, It says you can't, and I tell people, you can't wait to be inspired. No. My project is due by the end of the week. Yeah. I need to get it out, get over the inspiration. But I think the more that you learn to think like that, and the more you go, I've got a process. Like I write in the mornings, and I could go, okay, I need to write an article. And I may not know what I'm going to write, but I've got a certain way of researching it and pulling out a title, and then I can kind of move on from my experience.
Yeah, it's just starting, right? That's the hardest thing. One of my favorite quotes too is like, if you're in front of the easel every day, at least you'll be there when inspiration strikes.
That's right. That's right. It's like going to the gym. Just put your gym clothes on, even if you don't get on the machine. You're at the gym, so come home. You know. It's like
I actually that's a hack of mine, and I've had people ask me like, "What do you do on those days where you don't have it? You don't feel it?" Like the thought of going in to the studio and painting is just, you know, like you can't almost physically make yourself do it. And I actually use the gym analogy. I do the same thing with the gym. It's like, you know, I get dressed, I put on my running shoes, put on my gym clothes, and go to the gym. Yeah. I give myself permission that if I'm 10 minutes into a workout
Yeah.
and I'm just really not feeling it, I can come home.
Yeah.
But I've never done that. It's kind of like the hardest thing is getting on your shoes,
That's
getting
right.
clothes and driving to the gym.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing within the studio. So I do that on days that I really, really don't feel it.
Yeah.
I say, okay, well, I'm going to make myself paint for half an hour.
Yeah.
And if at the end of the half an hour, I still feel this way, I give myself permission to walk away. And it has happened occasionally, but maybe 3 times in 20 years. Usually by the time I actually get a half hour in, I'm back into it. And it's kind of like, I forget I even had to convince myself to come into the studio and paint.
Yeah.
But it's just that getting up and getting in front of the studio and starting.
Do you have a certain, first of all, what type of paint? I see landscapes. I don't know if that's all you do, or so what type of art are you doing? And then do you have a certain time of day that you prefer to paint?
Yeah, so all I paint is exclusively landscapes, in oil and water soluble oil. I started out as a high realist portrait painter because I loved painting people, but what I didn't realize is I loved painting people the way I wanted to paint them. And then once I started doing commissioned portraits, I realized that John Singer Sargent was right when he said a portrait is a likeness with something wrong with the nose.
That's right.
Because then it was painting by committee and painting a painting other people wanted me to paint, and then fixing it once it was done. And I just got so sick of painting other people's people the way they wanted me to paint that I got so turned off. I actually haven't painted a portrait in like 15 years. And so then that was scary. Right now I'm like kind of 2 years off the police force. I quit my job. I've kind of burned my britches. And then I say to my wife, like, I'm sick of painting portraits. Obviously that didn't go over well.
Right.
So I'll answer your first question about the time of day, then I'll get back to this because I think it's really important how I ended up making the switch from portrait to landscape. But yeah, my favorite time of the day is between noon and 5 p.m. To paint. And I actually, I read that somewhere that, like everybody has their key time when they're at their peak performance, and how important it is to identify that and then block that away for your thing. And so that's what I do. I try to set up my day every day so that by noon, I'm in the studio painting until around 5 o'clock. And I find I can only go 4 or 5 hours. And it's funny, people who don't paint or create, they say, well, that must be so relaxing to paint all day. Like, it is many things, but it's not relaxing. It is draining. It is exhausting. It is, I don't think I'm ever as focused in anything in life as I am when I'm standing in front of the easel.
Right.
And that really does kind of drain you. The only time that I find it's not draining is I love painting landscape, and the fall is one of my favorite things. So mainly I'm a studio painter and I work from photos that I've taken, but I do try to get away every year and paint plein air on location. And that I find is the one time where it's not only draining, it's refilling at the same time. Because I can go and paint plein air and I'll go from like 8 o'clock in the morning until it gets dark, and I'll bang off like 4 paintings. But I cannot paint at that intensity at home in the studio.
Right.
And I think it's while I'm out, and I love going up Lake Superior Park, and it's like, when you're standing painting Algoma Hill and you realize Lauren Harris stood within 50 feet of where I am right now when he painted it. And that spectacular scenery, it's actually refilling the creative well while it's draining it. So from noon till 5 for me, and I used to try to get up early and paint. I thought, well, I'll make more of my day, and I would find I'd get up and I'd paint. And then I'd spend 2 hours in the afternoon fixing what I screwed up in the morning. So I just realized that that's it. Noon till 5. That's my window.
We're so similar that it's amazing. It's amazing. I was plein air painting yesterday. I went up to Rockwood Conservation Area. I don't do the paint. I just do sketches, but I videotape it. And I make what I call sketch walks so people can see kind of where I was painting or whatever. And I just basically do the pen and ink and watercolor. But I'm the same way. I have to paint in the afternoon. So basically after 2, I've tried it in the morning because I'm a morning person. But I find with the phone and
emails,
I can't concentrate on painting until I've done all of that. So I get all of that out of the way. I like working at night. My wife will watch TV or something, and if I'm not doing that, I could go in the studio and watch. I find it relaxing. I'm mostly digital, so I can do it. I do it on my iPad. I can basically do that anywhere. So that's what I'm doing now. But it's really amazing to see how people work. So tell us, when you started, back when you were just starting and you quit the police force, how did you get started? Marketing is one of the things we talk about a lot here, like getting your name out. How did you do that? How did you do that?
So I'd already built up. I'd probably done about 100 portraits prior to leaving the police force, and most of my business came through word of mouth. And so by the time I left, that was still how I was generating all of it, and then just building my client list. And everything by snail mail back then, getting people's anytime anybody was interested in my work, it's like, well, would you be interested in getting my newsletter? So I would, do a newsletter like every few months, let people know what I was up to, and also use that to let them know. At the start, I guess I was in a couple galleries. When you first get into a gallery, you think, oh, this is great. My life's going to change. And it's like, I was just my work just sat in a gallery and didn't sell rather than sitting at home and not selling. But it was mainly for the first few years. So it was mainly portrait commissions, and it was mainly by word of mouth and me just building a client list. And then one of the biggest things that really helped my career was when I was elected to the Canadian Society of Painters and Watercolor, because that's a very elite group of some of the best artists in Canada, definitely the top watercolor painters. And I got to know a bunch of artists who were very successful. And then they recognized in me, I was at that time, a young guy who was big and strong, and that I was very early co-opted to come onto the board. And I realized later it's because they looked at me and said, he could lift stuff. We hosted a lot of shows at our annual open international show, but also and so there was always a lot of work in terms of moving paintings around, hanging paintings, and most of the members are much older, and it's kind of, for a lot of people, that's kind of like the crowning glory of their careers to be elected. So when they get young people on, it's like, let's get them on here and put them to work. But I just thought, I'm going to be a sponge. I am going to suck all the information I can out of all these people who are where I want to be.
Right.
And so that really helped me. And then not only helped me in terms of, again, for that whole idea of what is it I need to do next, it also got me in touch with a couple galleries one gallery in particular, Gallery on the Lake up in Buckbourne, Ontario, that getting in that gallery really kind of changed my life. But it's funny. So and at the time I was a portrait painter, and I thought that's what I was going to do. And then when I realized, I would rather go out and cut the grass or do laundry than go in the studio, I realized this is a problem. But also because of the fact that I was surrounded by these other artists so I actually mentioned to a few of them, here's my dilemma. I really love painting landscapes, but I kind of suck at it. What I'm really good at is portraits. And so I'd kind of and it's like, I've made my bed, I left the police force. I just have to resign myself to the fact that I guess I'll have to paint portraits to earn a living, and that's what I'll become known for. And I'll do my landscapes kind of for fun. And they also would sell like a half sheet watercolor. For mine back then would have been about $1,500. And of a portrait, and a half sheet landscape was $300 or $250. And so I said this to a number of friends of mine, and they said, well, yeah, that makes sense. You've got a young family and everything else. And then I said, do you happen to know Neville Clark, or know of Neville Clark? No. He's probably Canada's either the top or one of the top figurative watercolor painters in Canada. He's also probably, he's black, and he's I was.
Oh yes, I know now. I know his name now. Now it makes sense. Yeah.
And so it's kind of like well, I don't see him that much anymore, but he was a really good friend of mine, and he was on the board of the Watercolor Society, and I think he's probably one of Canada's, if not the really important black artists. And he actually has he's very involved in mentoring young black artists in the community, because there's it's not like there's a huge representation of that demographic in the arts here. But he was somebody that really, I just always looked up to Neville as like, he's where I want to be, right? And he lived in Pickering and I live in Whitby, so I would pick him up on the way to board meetings, and we have board meetings every month. And he was president, I guess, right before me, so I was vice president on the Canadian Society of Painters and Watercolor. Well, Neville was president, and on the way to and from the board meetings, I'd just pick his brain, and we'd talk serious about art. Like, and he's probably the person whose opinion I respected more than almost anyone. And I'd said this to a number of people, the idea that, I guess I'll just have to paint portraits. And we were driving home from a board meeting, and I said this to Neville, and it was like dead silence. I could almost feel the temperature drop 5 degrees in the van. And I could just feel his eyes boring into me. And I turned over, and he's the most mild-mannered guy you would ever meet. I've never heard him swear before in my life, but I looked at him, and he was just looking at me with this look of utter contempt. I said, "What?" And he said, "I'm fucking disgusted with you." Yeah. Like, what? And he's like, "I can't believe those words came out of your mouth." He's like, if you want to paint landscapes, paint in landscapes.
Right. Yeah.
But who told you? What made you think it would be easy? What made you he said, you've invested all of this time and effort into getting really good at figurative work, and that's great. Yeah. But if you want to do landscapes, then just invest your time in that. Right. And it was like a kick in the butt that I needed. Yeah. That was a turning point in my life. Right. But it's funny, I came home and I said to my wife, "Okay, no more portraits, I'm painting landscape." He's like, "Oh, no, you're not."
That's right.
So then there was about a 2-year period where I spent half my time doing the commissioned portraits still, but I spent that other half of my time painting in landscape. And then I'd also, one of the other things that, again, just being elected to the Canadian Watercolor Society and being around people who thought about art like at a much, much deeper level than I ever had. Yeah. And Ed Shawcross, who was a former president, we got talking one time, and he talked to me about the difference between process and product mode. Yeah. And I'd never heard of this before. And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, in product mode, that's when you do a portrait commission, right? The goal is to produce a piece of art that is the best that you can do right now with regard to what your skills, the concepts you've mastered, the techniques, all of that, to do the best you can do right now. And if you focus on that, you should hit that bar consistently. But the problem is, if that's all you ever do, that bar is never going to get raised." Right. And he said process mode is where you step into the unknown, into the what if. What if I did this? What if I did that? Yeah. And he said the problem that a lot of people have with that is in process mode, there's a lot of failure. And so people, they step out of their comfort zone, they fail, and then they scurry back to their comfort zone. He said, what you have to understand is you're supposed to fail in process mode. And you have to give yourself permission for the actual painting to fail when you step into that mode. And then it doesn't become discouraging, because it's like you often learn more from a painting that's, I used to say to students when I used to teach a lot, I'd rather have a spectacular failure than a mediocre success.
That's right.
And it's like, when you've got a piece that's on its way to becoming like a breakthrough, and then you screw it up, it's like you learn something there, right?
That's right.
And a lot of it is just what not to do the next time. Yeah. So anyways, Ed kind of explained this to me, and it got me thinking. It's like, okay, so I'm starting to spend more time in process mode, and just trying all kinds of different things. And then I was fortunate enough, I got to meet Zoltan Szabo through a friend in the Watercolor Society. He was a good friend of his, and he's like one of the gods of watercolor, the 20th century. And he said something to me, and all of this kind of stuff happened all at the same time as I was becoming dissatisfied with portraiture. And he said to me, he said, "Tim," he said, "you've got the technical skills to paint anything in the world, like representationally, and do a really good job at it." Yeah. And he said, "That's admirable, and that's actually a valid choice. Yeah. And if that's what you decide you want to do, then great." But he said, it should be a decision. It shouldn't be something that just happens because nothing else ever occurred to you. Right. And then he said, wouldn't it be great if you could create your own world on canvas or paper that was unlike anyone else's. And wouldn't it be a shame if we never got to see it because you never even thought to look for it?
That's right.
And it just like, I actually can feel the hair going up on the back of my neck as I say this. And it was like all of these things said to me at the same time. It changed my life. And that got me, again, thinking back to that whole thing about it's just about putting the time in and doing the work. And so I was all over the map stylistically for about a 3-year period. And I was painting in watercolor, I was doing casein, I was doing collage, I was doing oils, I was doing acrylic. And then gradually my style kind of, it's like taking a piece of this that I really liked. And I used to say to people, like, one of my friends in the Watercolor Society asked me if I was schizophrenic, kind of half joking, because he said, every time you submit a painting to a show, it looks like it was done by a different artist. And it's like, I'm trying to find who I am. And the only way I can do that is by tasting everything.
That's right.
And I used to say and people would say, how's it going? It's like, well, I think I'm headed in the right direction. And then it got to the point where I think I'm in the right neighborhood. And then it was like, I'm on the right street. I'm just looking for the house. And then it was in 2004, I guess. So 5 years in, and it was a struggle. Like it was like every time I would sell a painting, it was like, okay, this kind of gives me a little buffer between having the other conversation with my wife that we all knew was potentially going to be down there. I used to have a dream. There's a Dr. Seuss story, I forget what it is, where there's like a suit of clothes on a bike, riding a bike, chasing someone. And I used to actually dream about my suit chasing me, because that represented putting on a suit, get the job in corporate security. And so I was super, super motivated too, because it's like, I did not want to go back and get a job. And so it's like, I was in the studio and I was trying and I was like experimenting, but just pushing.
Look what you did now. I used to do the same thing. I used to read the want ads every single day, all the truck driver jobs. And I would look at, and I mean, I made good money trucking. There's nothing wrong with trucking, but I would look and I go, okay, you know, if I went and got a job to supplement, you know, maybe even a couple days a week at the beginning, I'm going to make like, I don't know, a couple $100, let's say. I could do that, but if I get one more commission, you know, and that just kept me going, like, let's market a little harder. Let's find a more work doing what you love instead of going to somewhere where you're going to be not really happy and doing that. Now you've had a successful time. I want you to tell about the LinkedIn story, because you had, tell us about that. We were talking about Paul Kopka before that. So.
Yeah. So I was on social media. I'd been doing social media kind of half-hearted, probably for a couple years. I was actually terrible at social media. I actually had so my son works for me full time, and my wife actually, I'm similar to you. My wife looks after all the administrative stuff. And
I don't want to do any of that anymore.
Kind of stuff. But I kept hearing you got to be on social media. So I actually said to my son, Cameron, who works for me, it's like, okay, you need to open me an Instagram account and like come in every day, take a picture of me painting and post it. And I said, like, but don't bother me with people's comments or questions or whatever, unless they want to buy a painting. I'm too busy for all that. Just post it and forget it. And then I discovered Gary Vaynerchuk and his whole philosophy about social media and about it being giving value. And he says, you know, someone asked him, well, Gary, you know, I don't have time to answer all these people's comments and everything like that. And he says, you need to tell me someone has taken time out of their day to actually type you a note about how much they appreciate what you do. And you don't have time to say, thank you, you effing, you know. And I remember reading this and thinking, oh my God, that's me. And so then I started watching more Gary Vaynerchuk. So this is kind of, I tend to go into long, convoluted stories, but it'll kind of come around. So that was about three and a half years ago, I guess, that I read that, discovered his work, and then I started reading his books. And my wife and I were on vacation in Park City, Utah, skiing. And I actually went back through I actually had to call my son at home, find out how do I log on to my Instagram account, because I'd never even seen it. So I logged on, I go through, and there's all these comments, and it actually, I felt ashamed that I hadn't responded. That some of them were so poignant. People are like, I'm going through terminal cancer, you know, and I'm going through treatment. When I look at your work, it really brings kind of light into my day. And I look and I think, this person commented this 8 months ago and got nothing from me. So I spent that whole vacation, every spare moment, going back and answering all of the comments and saying thank you, or just replying to everything that had been on my social media.
Yep.
And it was like, while I was doing that, one of my posts got picked up by another art site, and my followers, at the time I had 100 followers, I think, on Instagram.
Right.
And while I was on vacation, my followers went from 100 to 1,100.
Wow.
And
That's
so
a hell of a vacation.
and I'm a huge believer in kind of karma too, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, if I wasn't already all into what Gary Vaynerchuk was saying about social media, and that, you know, I thought I'm all in now. And so then I started really getting serious about social media. And then one of the other things that I read was that LinkedIn, the average LinkedIn user, makes over $100,000 a year. And I thought, well, that's my people. That's
where I want to go.
That's my target audience.
Sign me up.
That's my target audience for who's likely to buy my work, right?
Yeah.
Just the originals. And so it's funny, I took a course on LinkedIn online, and I still didn't see, okay, how am I relevant to LinkedIn? So I got my son took the online course too, and it's like, you got any ideas? It's like, nope. Yeah. It's like, well, I guess let's just do what we've been doing on Facebook and Instagram. We'll just post pictures of me at my studio working on pieces and just see what happens. Because the other thing I got from Gary Vaynerchuk, that if you're a creative, you know, creating content is so easy because you just document. You don't have to create, just document what you're doing today, right?
Oh, I'm a selfie king. Trust me. My wife is like, another picture of you. Sometimes I do photo shoots where I just change my shirt all afternoon and take pictures. And
exactly. It's like they know someone's getting tapped during the day. It's like, come in here, take a picture of me.
Right.
So we decided, okay, we'll just do that. And so it was literally the second post I did on LinkedIn. It was a picture of me sitting in front of, it was a big 4 foot by 7 foot painting that I just finished. And it was a spectacular piece. And I just commented, here's my latest painting at 4 feet by 7. It's one of the biggest pieces I've ever done. And posted it. Well, then I started to get likes, and then I started to get comments. And I'd already, this is just after I was a convert to responding to every comment, and then also learned that actually helps drive reach, that the more interaction that's going on, the more that post will continue to go out there. So I was answering every comment. So I started off, I got like, 10 or 15 comments. Oh, I love that piece, whatever. Oh, thank you. And then it got more, and then it got reposted by other people. And then it got to the point where I was getting hundreds of comments every day. I was getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and spending 2 hours answering comments, and then going back for a nap. And then at noon, another couple hours answering comments. And then it just kept going crazier and crazier and crazier. And it went viral. This went on over about a 2 or 3 week period.
Wow.
So I went from, I think I had like about 10 or maybe no LinkedIn followers, because I just started. By the end of the whole thing, I was up to 8,000 followers.
Wow.
But then I got a message from LinkedIn that said, we've detected unusual activity on your account.
You're just
like
spamming yourself.
if you're using, I didn't even know, they said if you're using scrapers or bots or whatever, this breaches your terms of, terms of use, and you need to desist. And so I actually responded back. I said, I'm just answering all of the comments that you guys are sending me. And then it got bumped up to, the person responded back to said, okay, well, that sounds reasonable. I'm going to bump you up kind of the next level. And I ended up getting bumped up to the top level of their compliance. Because each person was saying, okay, because my account had been flagged.
Right.
And so like, we want to get the flag off it, because this is great that you're getting this sort of response. And also by this time too, a little voice in the back of my head said, what if they end up suspending my account or something, right? But I also thought, well, I got no comeback because this is a free service. So I signed up for the LinkedIn Premium
Okay.
at that, and so now I'm paying for this service because I realize now if they take this away from me, they're taking away a service I'm
That's right.
paying for. I actually have a leg to stand on, and that's actually what ended up happening at the end of about 2 or 3 weeks. And by that time, it had gotten 110,000 likes.
Wow.
It gotten 11,000 comments, all of which I answered.
Yeah.
And then LinkedIn sent me, again, it was to the highest level of compliance. And once again, I said, I am just responding to comments that you guys are sending to me.
Yeah,
like
that's right.
LinkedIn is sending me all these comments.
Yeah.
And then the final response was, it doesn't matter what's causing it. If this continues, your account will be suspended. And then it was temporarily suspended for like a 24-hour period.
Yeah.
And it's like, you need to desist in answering these comments. So I need to stop saying thank you to people who are saying, I loved your work, you know. And then when they did that, I kind of knew, and I kind of thought going on, wouldn't it be if they suspend me for saying thank you?
Yeah.
I think there's a story in there.
Oh yeah, call Gary. Call Gary V. He'll tell you about that, right?
So I actually did, right? So I was featured in Gary's newsletter.
Okay.
Before I actually got suspended, but while the post was going viral.
Right.
Because I actually, when I got back from my vacation, this was about 3.5 years ago, before Gary was anywhere near what Gary is now.
Yeah.
But at the end of one of his books, he said, you know, I'd be interested in hearing what you think. Send me an email. And he had his email. So I sent him this email. I said, Gary, you know, I feel like I spent my vacation with you and my wife in Park City, Utah, and told him about, once I started answering comments, all of a sudden my followers kind of multiplied by 10 in the course of a week. And I just said, like, you know, I know you've changed kind of my life, and it's changed how I'm going to go about things. And so then he was at a point where I guess he wasn't getting inundated with communication like he is now. He actually responded to me that day and said, well, that's great to hear, Tim. He said, and he actually said, like, you know, we might want to use this in one of our newsletters or something. Would you be okay with that? And I said, yeah, sure. Well, then when the post went viral on LinkedIn, I emailed him again. It's like, Gary, you won't believe this. And I actually couched the letter in a lot of his terms too, right? And I said, like, you know, because he always said, people say, what should I do? Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn? And he says, yes, plus TikTok and, you know, YouTube. So I said to him, I said, you say, you know, you got to taste stuff to try it. So I thought, well, I'm going to post on LinkedIn because that's where my target audience is, but no idea what to do. So I just thought, we'll document and just put it up. And now I've got this post that's gone viral. And it's like, at that point, it had like 30,000 likes or whatever.
Wow.
Well, if you go back to, I think it's 2 summers ago in August on the Hustler's Digest, there's a picture of me from LinkedIn with Gary saying, oh, my buddy Tim up in Canada, you know, here's for all you people who are debating about what to do. It's like, just do it. So yeah, like that. So that the post went viral, and then I got suspended. So then I thought I'm going to talk to public relations people and see if we can get more mileage, because I'd already now been featured in the Hustler's Digest. So I just went on and Googled, and the name of the agency was Duet. It's two young girls just out of university that were starting their own PR firm. And I thought, okay, that's what I want. I'm thinking a boutique agency is something more that I want. So I just cold called them and said, here I am. Here's what's gone on. And now I'm basically suspended from LinkedIn for saying thank you. And I think there's a story there. What do you think? And they said, yeah, I think that we'll run with it. So we agreed to a contract where they said, we'll run with this for a month, and we'll just push it as hard as we can, just for a flat fee. So I think it was $2,500. They said, and it's like, we'll run with it. And I said, okay, super. So they ran with it. Well, I was on 1010 Talk Radio talking about this. I was on Global's morning TV show with the painting, which had like a viewership of like 3 million people. Text TV did an article about it. It was in a bunch of digital publications, as well as kind of like print, local print and all that. And I just got so much publicity out of it. And then what we did, I thought, okay, well, this image is really popular. And so then I put out another post, and I actually started direct messaging all of the people that had followed me on LinkedIn, saying that we are going to be coming out with a limited edition print of this painting, and we are also going to offer 25 hand embellished versions, only 25, and that I'm going to be announcing an offer on my newsletter for the ability to pre-buy the print at a 20% discount and get first dibs at the hand embellished prints. And that generated like 35,000 in sales.
Wow. That's amazing.
Of the prints and the hand embellished prints, plus the original painting was like the centerpiece of a solo show I was having at Gallery on the Lake. Well, it had received such notoriety, and I think the painting was like $17,000.
Okay.
It sold in the first hour of the show, and then we had a call from England, from someone in England who had been following the whole LinkedIn thing, who wanted to buy the painting, but it was already sold. So he commissioned me to do another $16,000 painting of a similar subject. And so then if I wasn't already kind of sold on the whole idea of social media, it's like, I'm all in now.
That's right. I guess so. That's an amazing story. Tim, I would love to go on forever. And I think we probably could. We may have to do a part B, but I want people to find out where they can find out more about you. And I'm sure you're on social media now.
Yeah.
So where should we go to learn about you? Do you have a website? Where's things going?
Yeah. So my website is www.timpacker.com.
Okay.
And then we've just actually launched a new website where where people can purchase downloadable videos of me doing paint-alongs. We just launched this. We have our first paint-along video up there, but I'm also going to be doing a bunch of courses. I'm actually going to be creating a course on becoming a successful artist.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Combat that book.
But, that's at timpackercreative.com.
Okay.
And then on social media, Instagram and Facebook, it's under Tim Packer Fine Arts.
Okay. Just
all one word. And I'm on as Tim Packer on LinkedIn.
Wow. Well, Tim, thank you so much. I mean, your stories, I just love it because I see myself in a lot of them, and just the way my business has developed. Totally. And I think I know a lot of successful artists, and I really fight this whole artists are starving crap that you hear. I've really got a big
lazy artists are starving.
Yeah. Well, I've met so many successful artists in all genres, from music to visual arts and everything, just doing this show. So it's really a big thing to me. Thank you for your time today. And we're going to hook up, and I think we're going to have to maybe come back and do another one on your course. We'll let you get that going, and then we'll do another one. But would love to just keep talking all day.
Super. Yeah.
I wish we could.